got a foul mind, you're seeking away. I got the birds viewing the sun on the way. Come to the mountain and we'll regenerate. Look out for the wildfires, we live in LA. Gold diggers and goldzillas, eh? They all on their way, way. We get no water, we get no rain, eh? But you on your wave, wave. High trips on dinosaurs, hit the shores, cause we over the board like matadors. I said, hey baby, human nature, we in danger, need angels like you can step up and switch up the angles.
Alright, and there goes another trippy fade out. We're starting off episode 14 of Talk Like No One's Listening, the podcast. I am your host, James, at James Cholorim, wherever you may find. And here we are. It's always a surprise to me that I managed to do a new episode of this podcast. And so this is the 14th time that I've been surprised that I keep doing it. But I've started to get some tiny bit of feedback from, the internet world that people are actually listening and getting some kind of enjoyment out of this. So that's the whole reason why I would want to do this in any shape or fashion. So, even if just a few handful of people send me comments or just whatever, say that they like it, then that's enough to keep me doing it. So I am speaking of my experiences and as a music professional for the benefit of anybody that would find benefit. So thank you for anyone that's listening, that has listened, that continues to listen. And if you really dig the show, then please subscribe on either Apple to the iTunes podcast app or Google Play or any one of those things. It's a funny thing that most of the plays and streams I've gotten of my episodes has been off of SoundCloud, like by far, way, way, way more. But the problem is that SoundCloud plays do not count towards like the status of your podcast. Like if you were to, for the rankings of who's the top podcast and who's making, advertising money and all that good stuff, it's based off of those kind of numbers from Apple and Google Play and other kind of more, I don't know if they're more legitimate, but just more standardized sources like that. But everything that comes from SoundCloud, just whatever reason, doesn't count. That kind of sucks. So, I have no sponsors. I have no advertising. It's just me. So we can get straight to it. So today's episode, I am explaining and talking about the work that I did for this album by an artist named Teo. And I have done a previous episode for Teo on a single that I recorded for him called Uno Dos. You may have heard that episode. You may know that song. I hear it every time I'm nearby a Chipotle. And that's just an inside joke, but it's actually true. That literally happens all the time. So, but yeah, finally, Teo, he has his debut album out in the world, ready to go. And that song that you heard in the beginning is track number 8. One of my favorites. Probably, I guess it's my favorite. That's why I put it as the intro for the episode. Belong in the Sun. Produced and co-written by a guy named Lito, who I've talked about before. He co-produced and produced stuff for Jaden Smith on his projects for Sire and Sire Electric. So I've probably mentioned him before and talked about his stuff. So yeah, this song is pretty cool because I guess I'll just start from here with this song. I was fortunate enough to be around for the entire life of this song. I was there at the session at Lito's studio when they first created this song, from the very, very, very first session of creating, from nothing to something. Lito had a basic kind of premise for a song. He started putting down some some tracks of some, keys and drums and things like that. Just a rough idea. Teo came up, started playing guitar. That main guitar that you hear in the song, that's Teo playing it. He came up with that, then laid that in. Then they started just kind of writing. Teo did most of it, and Lito kind of, as the producer would, just let the artist do their thing, give suggestions, help them find out what are the really dope lines that they're coming up with, and pick out the best. So that happened. We had one night where the rough version of the song came together. Lito, he did all his vocals that first night also. And then, so later on, me and Teo, we finished the song together. So he, Teo as co-producer. So it's basically like him and Lito were the producers of the song. And then me as engineer, just being there with him to record all the additional elements that came in later, the additional vocals. Just the beginning verse that you hear from Teo, that's all he had so far from like that first night. And then Lito had the hook part done. So then Teo had to do his second verse and the outro vocal and all that stuff. But there was a lot of writing and experimentation and trying lots of different parts and new sections of the song, and some parts came and went, and so now we have what you hear for this final result, if you've already been listening to the album. And I really like this song because it's such a nice blend of like a real nice like 50-50 of live instruments and programmed MIDI instruments. It's a nice excuse me, had to really I'm sorry, I just had to adjust in my chair. But it's the text. I just really love like the feel and the texture of the song, because it gives you like these kind of warm, organic feelings from these live elements of the guitar and the live bass, and there's some live percussion, and then just the vocal performances of Teo and Lito, and then Lito's MIDI programmed elements too, which is some of the percussion you hear, and there's some keys that you hear and things like that. And it all gives you that, it gives you that organic, warm feeling, plus just the modern feel of something that's programmed MIDI. And especially when it comes to the later part of the song, when the full beat drops in, and just like, it just all comes together, and it fits and complements very well. So it was, it's a fun challenge to kind of mix that also, because it's trying to get, you don't want to sound like, you don't want them to sound separate. Like, oh, I can tell that certain things are just so MIDI because they're so perfect and quantized and like volume and all that stuff, and then the live stuff is so live and raw. So yeah, it's when I'm taking the organic live stuff, I'm trying to smooth that out and make that all feel a bit more in the direction of the MIDI, and then just taking the MIDI stuff and trying to add more tone and texture to those elements to make them feel like not so just digital and whatnot. And I really like the end result. A lot of people say that's their favorite song. I think it's just one of those things you could play any time of the year and you're immediately back in summer. It's a cool vibe. So, but there's a lot of great songs on this album. It's a short album. It's only 9 songs, and the songs are short. But I think for today's, just the world of music today and the way that people are consuming it, I think it's good to not make a long album. Well, I mean, do whatever you want. I'm just saying, I know for me, like, I feel like I'm older, so I have a decent amount of attention span. But I know a lot of other people that are listening to music way more because they have more free time, like if you're younger or whatnot. There's no way, like, there's just so much music coming out all the time that it's just hard to listen to everything that you could possibly want to listen to. It's just too much. So I think when you give people something that is easily digestible, it gets across your message and the thing that you just want to project and communicate to the world through your music. When it's a smaller bite to swallow, a quicker meal to finish, then you are able to get people to actually digest the entire project before they feel like they're gonna skip and just go to the next thing. So the whole album plays less than 30 minutes, I think. So I think it's important for an album like this for people to listen through all the way from beginning to end, because it really tells a complete story as far as the for being a debut album for an artist. I think it's a great project that gets across to people what it is that makes Teo who he is. What are his influences, his styles, all the different things. And there's, way more than what you even hear in this album, but it's very diverse. He's a very diverse person. He's into so many things, and a lot of times the traditional thinking of the music industry is, for an artist, like, you don't want to be all over the place. You don't want to be doing too many different things. As if, like you have to put yourself in one box for people to be able to digest you. But that's just not true today anymore. I think more with each year that goes by in my time of being a music engineer professional, I just feel like a lot of these rules and standards and guidelines of the traditional music industry are all just becoming more and more irrelevant all the time. So I now just feel like all the time I don't like to make any kind of judgments or decisions based off of that type of thinking. I just feel like you can do whatever you want. You can really do whatever you want, literally. If you want to just make a whole album where every single song is a completely different genre, different sound, if the music's not good, then people won't listen. But if it sounds good and people like it, what's the big deal? It could be the idea of an album. It could be weird to just jump around, because I think it's definitely a skill and a thing in itself to be a good curator of music. That's basically what DJing is. Good DJing is. And so to make good songs is one thing, but then to be able to pick out of all the songs that you've made, to properly curate them into an album so that the whole album plays as one continuous experience, I think that's an art in itself. So that's something you should consider. So as long as that all works together in terms of from the perspective of the album and also from the perspective of the individual songs being good, then go crazy. Go as crazy as you can. And I think that's a bit of what happened here. And I really enjoyed this album personally, just as something just to listen to and to enjoy the work that I've done, which was that, I'm sorry, just had to burp. Anytime, like a lot of these projects I do, there's always a challenge. Everything is different. Everything has its own characteristics to it, and they all provide you with their own specific challenges. And so it's always a test for yourself to see, can you figure out this next puzzle? And sometimes you can base, your decisions off past experiences of past songs you've worked on. And sometimes that'll work for you. Sometimes you can use the same solution twice. But a lot of times, specifically for this album, I kind of had to just start fresh mentally and just take each song as it came. And when it came to, I was already, I recorded everything on this album too. So I was very, very familiar with the songs before I had to mix them. So in a way, some people think that's not good. Some people think it's better to have a separate person mix an album or songs, so that way they have fresh ears, fresh perspective coming to it. And I think that is true. That can work for, I mean, it can work. It can work and it can also not work. But I think that's just not a thing that's true 100% of the time. For this project, it was very specific in what Teo wanted everything to sound like and feel like. And this is something that had developed over the course of making the album. He didn't always know, what he knew in the end. It all was forming and he was figuring it out in his own mind. So it required, I think in this situation, it required somebody that was a part of the project early on to have seen what Teo had been through over the course of this project, to understand, really well what it was that he was wanting to hear, to really understand and hear it through his own ears, so to speak. And that was tricky. It was not easy. But I think it was because I was the recording engineer also that I was able to figure it out. Figure out what was the right balance of everything in these mixes that was going to give him what he wanted to hear. The right balance of, cleaning up the songs, giving them a nice polish, making them sound more just presentable and just balanced and everything, but leaving enough of the rawness, organicness there, so that it stayed true to these kind of, the rough demo, not even demo, but just the rough previous versions of the songs is what, he had gotten used to hearing. So it was a very delicate thing, which I think if this had gone off to somebody else to mix who was hearing everything for the first time, they would not know the full story. They would not be informed properly about Teo and his process and his ear and just what he looks for. I mean, it's possible that someone could do it and they could knock it out of the park and just do a perfect job. That's totally possible. There's plenty of guys out there that just can do it because they're that good. But I would say that's probably a more slim chance. So, like this album has live elements, has, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, nylon string guitar, has live drums, live bass, live percussion, and then it has an equal amount of digital, like programmed MIDI elements out of Logic, out of whatever, that are the other half of it. And that was really Teo's evolution over the past few years, because he started making all his music himself in in Logic, where he's making a whole track that's just fully programmed, that he's doing all in MIDI, and then he's just doing his vocals on top of that. And the journey began with him just starting to slowly introduce more and more live elements, starting with Uno Dos. That was like a huge one, where that song started out MIDI programmed also, but then as the production of it moved along and it evolved, certain things got replaced with a real live version of it instead, like the guitar, the bass, more percussions, things like that. And as he developed more as a student of music, taking guitar lessons and vocal lessons and things like that, and being a songwriter, being a vocalist, being a performer, being a musician, playing guitar, a lot of things were happening and evolving and progressing within him over the course of making this. So every month, it would be just mentally, he would just be in a new place because he just had moved along further on his journey. So he would always constantly be just having this perspective that's always changing on what he wants to do. And then so for me, I had to just stay very fluid and flexible throughout this process and understand that this is just how it was going to go. Some songs would be like on the list of these are going to go on the album for sure. Time would go on. Some would just disappear off that list. Some new ones would start. They'd be all of a sudden at the top of that list. Then maybe they might just drop back off that list. It was like it was shuffling a lot. It was shuffling a lot as far as the track listing, and with the time frame of when he was feeling like this is the general amount, like time of the year that he would like to release this album. We realized, okay, then that gives us this amount of time to finish it. So once we kind of had an idea of how much time was left, then decisions had to be made of that. Okay, well, some songs aren't going to make it because we don't have enough time to finish them. So based on what we already have, let's figure out what's the best of what we have now. What are the best songs that are completable within this amount of time? So it was a lot of that, just decisions changing constantly. And so I had to keep that all in mind because, it wasn't until all the songs are totally done and we have an actual track list that, okay, now in my mind, now I know this is what I'm going to be doing when I sit down to mix. A couple songs I started on early for the mix just because some of the ones that were more difficult that I knew they were going to take more time, I just started anyways just to get ahead of it. And but I also I did have to consider, once we did have the final track listing, I did have to consider what is the order of these songs, so I know just what is the overall sound and feel of this album going to be. So there's a lot of things I had to leave open. I couldn't commit to fully yet. I just had to start mixing and just start doing the foundation work of what the mix is, what I need to do, which is, for me, for this process, I guess what I normally do when I'm mixing is I get everything, I do it all in the box, so I'm getting Pro Tools sessions or I'll just get stems, whatever. But basically what I do is once I got everything just kind of organized in Pro Tools, I go through everything individually first. Like I comb through every individual track of music, of all the instruments and the drum sounds and every vocal. I comb through everything first, and I do one pass of mixing first individually, just listening for what are the immediate things that I hear in each one of these recordings or sounds or tracks that need to be adjusted regardless of the final mix. Just especially with live instruments, you just know certain things off the bat need to be EQ'd a particular way. Things need to be cleaned up. Something might need to be time adjusted, pitch adjusted, cleanup work like that. There might be some noise in a track, might have to do some noise removing software like RX, Isotope RX. Things like that. Just getting every track individually, just giving him a quick makeover, I guess. Sounds don't have fingernails. So I'll give a quick makeover to everything just to be the things that I know I'm going to do. Like a kick drum, I'm going to make the kick drum kick harder. It's going to have more impact, more punch, more bottom end. It's going to be just more effective of a kick. Same thing with the snare. Same thing with the bass or an 808. I know I'm gonna make a bass guitar or an 808. It's like that's the bass, that's the sub. You need, depending on what it is. But yeah, like there's certain things you just know for sure that you need to do to certain sounds and certain vocals. So I do that first, and then I got that all together, and then I start to listen to it as a whole, and then start thinking about just put it in my brain, map it inside my brain so that I can somehow have, through looking at Pro Tools, it just helps me create like a visual map in my mind. So when I'm thinking about the song and what I'm going to do for the mix and what adjustments I need to make, I can hear it, but I can also just see it in my head. So that way I could see it by, different sections of the songs. I can see that these are the elements that are in this verse section of the song. These are like the musical elements, these are the vocal elements. And then maybe there's, a pre-chorus or just a chorus or not, or there's a bridge, there's an intro, there's an outro. So just, I have that. So as I'm listening through and I'm hearing things that are standing out to me that I want to adjust and fix, I hear them, but then visually I know where they are also. So that way when I go into Pro Tools to do the thing that I'm going to do, it's just already pinpointed in my brain. So like I just go straight to it and I do the adjustment that I need to do. And then I just do that for a while. I just keep listening through to make sure I get the levels of everything balanced out properly. I base it off of whatever is the most recent version of the song before I started mixing. That's what we've been working on together. So that way, that's the one I know. We've agreed up until that version of the song that this is what it needs to sound like. So I make sure that I'm referring back to that previous version, that levels of everything are as close to that as possible. And that just, the overall feel is not getting too far away. Because once I go through and I do my first pass of everything individually, things are going to change. It's like once you just clean up first and you start pulling away and filtering out like unnecessary frequencies and things like that, then it just automatically is going to sound different because you're clearing up more space, and things just that were maybe masked before, they get revealed. So then you have to kind of do a second round, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it. It's a second round of cleanup of, okay, so now that everything has been some of the fat has been trimmed and more things are being revealed. Okay, now we have to go through and address all these things that are being revealed. Are they good things or bad things being revealed? Do they need to be unrevealed again? I mean, do they need to be taken out so you are not hearing certain things? Or, anyways, it just changes. Like, when everything changes, the whole, when the individual parts change, and of course the whole is going to change. So then I have to take in consideration of what the previous version was, compare it, A, B, playing back and forth, and compare and see, am I getting better or getting worse? And so I just do that until I feel like I've gotten back to what the reference mix sounds like, but with the added benefit of having all the individual tracks cleaned up. So that gives you more space in the full spectrum of the mix, so that by creating more space, all the individual parts just have more room to be doing their job, to be felt, to be heard the way that you expect them to, so that things are not just clashing and conflicting and you're not competing, too much for frequency range of like what's going on with the main vocal versus the music. That's always the challenge. You have to let the music sound like, you want to push the music to sound as good as it can to be sounding like what you are intending it to sound like, but there's always the vocal there. If it's vocal music, of course, there's always the vocal there that has to be, doesn't have to be, but let's just say for this particular case, it has to be, the priority is the vocal. The main vocal has to be right there in front. That's the star of the show. So you have to compare that, what the vocal sounds like, to what the music sounds like frequency-wise, and you have to start pulling back on these frequencies that are in the music, of frequencies that are very similar in range of where the vocal is, so that the brain is not just having to work hard to hone in, focus in on that vocal, because the brain is going to want to focus in on that vocal, because that's the human part. A human is always going to want to, brain is going to focus on what another human is saying. If you think about that, when you're in a crowd of people and you're having a conversation with somebody, there's a ton of people all around you, all talking a lot, talking loud. But when you are having a conversation with somebody that's right in front of you, all that stuff gets tuned out. Like subconsciously, you know that that noise is there, but you're not hearing 100 conversations going around you. Your brain is not picking up on those words. So it's the same thing where it's like the main vocal that you're hearing in the song is like the person that you're having a conversation with, and the music is all the people in the background, where it's there, you feel it, but your brain just wants to go to that one voice. So I feel like that's what's going on. What I'm trying to do in the mix is give you enough of the music to hear it, to feel it, to know it's there, but to pull it back enough to that point where I feel that there's nothing that's pulling my attention away from that vocal, the lead vocal. Maybe I could have said that in less words. I don't know. That was a long explanation, I feel like. But hopefully you get what I'm saying. And yeah, but like I'm saying, there's cases where doesn't have to be like that. If you listen to a lot of rock music, a lot of times the vocal is somewhat just mixed in as if it's another instrument. Really, it's kind of just buried right in there along with the guitars and the drums and everything. So it's not a vocal that stands out on top. For some people, like the Strokes, if you listen to the Strokes kind of stuff, older stuff, a lot of their songs, I can't understand what the fuck that guy is saying, Julian. But that's intentional, It's like he has a very kind of distorted lo-fi sound on his vocal, and it's the volume level is kind of within the same level of the guitars, and it's same frequency range, so it all blends in as one. And I think that works, and it sounds amazing. I love that. So that's, a situation where that can work. But I say most of the time, for anyone that's a really good vocalist, the whole point is to hear them. No one's going to ever make a song with Adele and not have her vocal be the main thing right up in front. It just kind of be like, what was the point of you having Adele on your song if we can't hear her very well? She's not a background singer. She's not meant to be a background element. It's like, anyways, you get it. So that was what I had to deal with for every song for Teo. And the good thing is that Teo, his voice sounds like what it sounds like. So, okay, I know what his voice sounds like. So I know what are the characteristics of his voice? What are the kind of frequency ranges he's hitting? What's his range pitch-wise that he sings at and all that. So I know that's kind of like one thing that's constant through every song. But from song to song, the music changes a lot. And so that's the other side of the challenge, is that getting all these different songs of different music stylings and production styles to all fit together to his constant sounding voice. And so, yeah, I had to do it in different ways. Let's go through, I'll run down the album track list real quick. And hopefully you've heard the album by now, so you'll know what I'm talking about. So starting with Really Wrong, that song is, I think it's, 100% all live instruments. That's just live drums, bass, guitar, keys. And it just kind of builds. It's a short song, but it builds from just being a very open, spacious kind of song with just the guitar and the keys starting out and the vocals. So there's plenty of room. It's spaced out and it feels nice and open and airy. And then the drums come in, bass comes in, then the drums come in, and then it gets loud, and it just, then it's all of a sudden there's a lot of things happening at once. So, especially with drums, once you get the drums coming in, then that's creating a lot of extra sound information. So that's something that definitely all of a sudden just takes up a lot of space. So, and then the guitars get a bit louder also, and there's more guitar layers happening. So the music needs to build and just feel like the intensity is going up, but you also have to maintain keeping the vocal as the main priority. So that's what I did. Figured it out. Wasn't easy. The drum sound on this one was something that we went back and forth on a lot. Tried out a lot of different sounds, and like as far as the blend of the live drums, what type of additional maybe effects or distortion or things like that might be on the drums. There's an additional snare layer, like snare sample layer added on top, and that was like, do we need that? Maybe we don't. Yes, we do. Okay, how much? Too much? Not enough? There's that. And then the vocals, like there was the very ending part, that was not 100% done yet. Like by the time I started mixing it, there was still like a possibility that there might be more vocals at the end, but then decided to not. And then so that makes such a huge difference as far as what I'm going to do for the mix, as if there's going to be vocals there or not. Like I said, is there going to be that vocal that's going to be the star of the show? Well, if it's no, then all right, then the music as a whole gets to be the star of the show, because that's, so now I get to bring the music up to be a bit more full and in front and intense. So that can be, take front stage too. And so those are totally different considerations. So that was the thing that I just had to wait. I had to wait till the very last minute to know how I was going to wrap that one up. Uno Dos, like I said, I did a full episode on that one previously. You can check out. Through My Hair next. Through My Hair is mostly like a programmed like MIDI beat. So that one, I feel like that was probably one of the easiest, maybe the easiest one to mix because of that. I've been doing a lot of live stuff this past year, and when you get used to that and then you go back to just mixing a song that's all programmed in MIDI, to me it's so much easier, because you're just taking out way more variables. It's like, think about a programmed drum beat. A typical programmed drum beat. You're using the same kick sample, snare sample every time, hi-hat sample, like percussion. It's the exact same sound hitting every time. It's quantized usually. It's not going to have like a huge difference in volume from each particular hit of that sound. A lot of times it's the exact same velocity, so it's like you are getting the exact same volume of that kick drum or snare drum or whatever every single time it hits. So once you figure out what that one sound needs to sound like in the mix, as far as your EQ, compression, things like that, any reverb or whatever, and just the volume level, once you get that set, then you're like, it's it. You don't have to touch it, really. I mean, not that much, because it's pretty much, it's not going to change. So once you get the drums, the drum layers all ready to go like that, then it's like, all right, well, that's what they're going to sound like for the rest of the song because it's a loop basically. It's a looping, repeating pattern. So there's that. There was some keyboard synth kind of elements, which same thing. It's like it's not a huge difference in what it sounds like throughout the song. Where it's like when you have a song that's all live, like the song before, Really Wrong, those, like the guitar track that goes through the main guitar track, that changes and evolves throughout the whole song. It goes through different styles of playing, different styles of strumming and picking, different registers of the octaves of the key of the guitar. So it's a human playing it. It's Teo playing it. So it's not like he's hitting each strum and picking each string with the exact same volume like every single time. So there's different points at which it might go a little bit louder than what you want or quieter than what you want, and that's when automation comes in, and you got to just customize it, make it a custom fit. So because of that, Through My Hair was probably one of the fast. It's a short song too, but still, it's one of the fastest ones for me to kind of get to the finish line. Because once I got the beat, there's a couple of extra elements laid in top. I think some guitar stuff, but nothing crazy, not a lot. And then there's not a ton of vocals. Really, it's mainly his main lead. There's a couple of backgrounds, but not a lot. And but yeah, that was just by comparison. That was maybe Through My Hair was one of the ones I started later on. So the more difficult ones I said before, I started first, knowing that I was gonna need more time on those ones. So once I got to do Through My Hair, that was a breeze. Still a challenge because I didn't want to. I had to switch back to in a way like I had to flip on the hip hop switch in my brain of like that's the sound we're going for, but also keeping it within the world and feel of the album. Okay, next, More to Us. This song was an interesting thing, similar to what I did for the Sire Electric album, which was my last episode where I talked about that, where it was a song that's mostly guitar and really spacious kind of atmospheric kind of feels and like elements to it with no drums. So what I had talked about before for the Sire Electric album was like, that changes a lot when you don't have drums. Now all of a sudden you have way more space to work with, but then what do you do with all that space? Now you have different considerations. But it's not a lot. I think More to Us, it was more about I got it to a point. I got it to maybe a 80% point like pretty quickly, I think, because it was one of the older songs on the album, so it just was more just already printed in my brain. I already kind of just knew what I was going to make it sound like from way back. So anyway, I think that's a benefit for me too, to just already have this little bit of a blueprint already started in my head of what I'm going to do. And it really just came down to Teo just commenting on certain specific details of certain sounds. When you hear that song, there's a lot of layers of stuff. So there's these little detailed things in the background that you'll hear. And so he just wanted certain things to be louder or quieter or things like that. It wasn't nothing crazy. And next was Out of Hand. Out of Hand is a song that has a key change in the middle, and it's a key change that is happening just from post-production, from pitch shifting. The first half of the song is pitch shifted down, and that's something that Teo had done from the very beginning of making the song. What you hear from the basic beat of the song with that guitar loop and the drums, that's what Teo started on his own, just in Logic. So it's like programmed drums and a guitar loop. And as he wrote the song, he had that pitch change in it. So on his vocal you hear, and it was really an interesting thing that he had came up with, and that his explanation of what you hear Tim talking about in the song is kind of going from like dark to light, of having this kind of awakening of being in this kind of more lower vibrational unconscious level to being raising a vibration. Literally, that's the difference of a key change, of a pitch change, changing your vibration. So I thought that was really cool, because it just, hearing his vocal when it's pitched down in that beginning part, it makes it really like give it this weird trippy psychedelic feel to it, and really cinematic also. So that was something that I think I lived with that song for a long time too. So I knew where I wanted to go with it. It was just more of the challenge of having lots of elements to work with. In that song, there was additional electric guitar played on top, and it's really like with a lot of effects and delay and reverb. So it's like really kind of psych rock elements going on top of the main guitar. There's a lot of live percussion, live drums, like not the full drums, but the hi-hat, rim shot stick, drumsticks just hitting together, claps, live hand claps, and just random percussion. We were at a studio recording that stuff, and they had, like a box of just junk, just random pieces of things that you could hit to make noise. And, so there's a lot of stuff going on like that. But the fact that it was like a song that just changes that kind of pitch halfway through, then it becomes like the second half is in a shifted frequency spectrum, where what I was doing EQ wise on the first half, I had to adjust a little bit, like just even for the vocal, because like certain frequencies that I'm cutting and boosting for the pitch down vocal, once it goes higher, then all of a sudden, those adjustments aren't in the same place anymore. So I have to just, re-EQ basically for the whole second part of the song. And a little bit, I had to do a difference in some of the compression and what I was doing on the master bus and things like that. That was, first time I've had to do something like that. And then just for this whole album, really, it was all about just a non-technical feel. It wasn't a thing that was going to be considered done and right based on any kind of like technical standard. Teo's all about feel. That's what goes into his songwriting and production, and his performances is all about feel. So when the song sounds right for him is when it feels right. So I had to really keep that understanding, in my own head through this whole time, of being able to tell if I'm in the right feel or not. So, that kind of stuff is tricky because you can't put your finger on it. It's a thing, it's a mood, it's a feeling, and you have to rely on it as your measuring stick. But it's a measuring stick that changes from day to day based on how somebody can feel, So some days the measuring stick is not even a stick. Sometimes that measuring stick transforms into an orange, and then it's like a rock. Then it's an avocado. Then it's back to a stick. And you're like, all right, well, then I have to figure out what feels good no matter what the measuring stick is of the day. I don't have an answer for what that is exactly. All I know is just, in the end, obviously the album is done and it's out, which means we got to a point where everybody was happy with how it was sounding and feeling. So all I can say is we did it. We got it done. But that was definitely the big challenge throughout this whole process, was being able to understand and feel for something that is very kind of elusive and not concrete that you can just grab and hold and know if is this it or not. So moving on to Part of Me. Part of Me started from a basic track of like a guitar loop and a drum loop, and then more things got added onto it. More live guitar got added on top of it, which is doubling the guitar loop, so that we're basically playing the same thing with live guitar. So it takes away from the feeling that it's just like a repeating loop. You get to feel that it's somebody playing, and that person playing is an artist named Maro, Maro. She's Portuguese, so she does a lot of Brazilian style music, which she has a great voice and she's a great guitar player. And I think she's a really good piano player too. I think that's her first instrument. But Maro and Teo are good friends. She contributed to this album with this song, and let's see. So you probably, if you know Teo, you might know Maro already, but if not, check her out too. She's really dope. I have only worked with her stuff that she's collaborated on with Teo. But yeah, she's really easy to work with. She's really talented. She's doing vocals on the song too. When you hear the female vocals, that's her in the background. And so this song was a challenge, not technically, because there's not a lot in the track, not a lot of music elements, not a ton of vocals. This was definitely one where the challenge was just getting the feel. And that was a thing with each version of the mix, each version of just making the song. Every time we add to it and I send it to him and give him a new version of the bounce, that was just a thing that changed a lot throughout the life of this song, life of making it. Yeah, but it was kind of funny. It was one of those things I'm like, I don't know, let me just do what I've been doing. And this might have been towards the later part. Yeah, this might have been one of the last songs that I fully mixed on the whole thing. So I was probably feeling a bit fatigued, a little bit worn, out of it, but kept on going strong. Had to maintain, keep my focus on it, keep my ears open, keep my feeling open. And it came down to getting the right balance of the guitar elements with the drums, with the different other layers of more electric guitar that got added later, which once they came later in the process, like new elements, like when you add new elements to a song kind of late in the process, then all of a sudden you're like, all right, well now it's a totally different thing to consider what this song is now that you added these new things. And we've been so used to hearing it one way, and all of a sudden it's new. But then we're getting close to the deadline, so we have to decide soon, is this what you want it to sound like or not? And there was a lot of back and forth and figuring out, like, what is the perfect blend of some of these new elements of guitar. It's like, are they supposed to be more background, or they need to be up more front to fill in? And we didn't really know. So it was just a matter of just taking the time to listen to it and make different versions and different adjustments until we kind of settled on what it was going to be. And then, like I said before, once it finally settles to what the song is really going to be and what all the individual elements are going to be doing, then I can really lock in and bring the mix all the way to the finish line. I wish there's a way that I could talk, or anybody could talk and not have mouth sounds, because I know they're annoying. They annoy me. So I apologize to everyone else listening if it bothers you. But as of now, it's impossible to talk without additional noises happening from your mouth. Your lips smack, you're breathing in, you're breathing out, you sniffle, like you burp, whatever. Like there's just, what can I say? We're human. Let's go on to United Palace, which is, it's its own track, but it's basically, yeah, it's an interlude. And this one was, okay, maybe this is the easiest because it's an interlude. It's short and there's not a lot, and it's because it's not like a typical song with, there's a vocal in it, but it's more of a, it's meant to be kind of buried in the background and be like just a background element. So this mix was really just, yeah, it's all feel on this one because there wasn't necessarily like a right or wrong of how loud all the different music elements were to be together. It's just the level of the vocal got adjusted a couple times back and forth to get the right feel. But this one is just all about a vibe, a feeling. That's what the whole thing was when it got created from Teo. And yeah, it's kind of a weird one. It's not meant to be, it's just, yeah, it's meant to be an interlude, just be like a little passing vibe that you go through from, transition from one part of the album to the next. So I don't know, not too much to say on that one, really. Belong in the Sun. I already talked about this one, didn't I? Pretty sure that's what I started with. Let's see if there's anything else I didn't talk about. Oh, the live bass. I really love the live bass that got played on this. That's probably came in right at the end. That was a very last minute decision. There's some additional keys being played that came in last minute also. And then, yeah, this song was like, because we had a good reference, that was something I had to refer back to and have it be a thing to compare to, and that made it easier to like just, you just know when you're off. Like, does it sound like the reference or not? Then it's like, okay, well, I know which direction to go because I know I'm not going in that direction. So that means I need to go the other direction. So it wasn't like really tricky, I feel like, to get this one. It was just more of once I got to, yeah, like again, 70, 80%, then I get Teo's opinion on it, and then he tells me things he wants to adjust, bring up, bring down, brighten, darken, things like that. He's very specific, and it's very good. It's good. Well, here's the thing. Whether you are very specific or not, as a creator, as somebody that's having somebody mix music for you or engineer music for you, whether you are specific or not, the main thing has to be that you know what you want and you're consistent in knowing what you want. If you are very specific, but you don't fully know what you want, that's okay, because at least you can tell right away when it's what you don't want. But then it might take a while to really pinpoint specifically that the way that you do want it. So if you are very general and you're not very specific about what you want, but you know what you want, it's just not super specific, that can be easy because it's once you just kind of get it within the ballpark, or a little bit smaller than the ballpark, but approximately getting a mix to sound like what this person is asking for, that can be easy because they just want it. Yeah, it's easy to get them to say yes, basically. If you are very general and you don't know what you want, maybe that's the worst out of all, because then it's just a shot in the dark every time you're trying to make decisions and send mixed versions to a person like that, because they just know they don't like it, but they don't know why, and they don't know what to tell you. to get it in the direction they want. That's probably the worst, because then you have no idea. At that point, I mean, I try to not work with anyone like that, if that's the case. Or you just, you kind of, here's the thing of what I've said before about how engineering is really like, definitely like at least 50% is just dealing with people and the human element. And a lot of times you got to know when you need to tell people that you work with what the deal is. You may or may not be in a position of power to tell them that, depending on if they're like some kind of big name artist, or they might be just indie and they're starting out and they don't know. Sometimes they need some help and advice and coaching. But yeah, this is hard work, obviously. So it takes a lot of time. And when you have deadlines and things like that, you need to get your work done. And you need to be able to streamline your process as best as you can, so that you are doing your job and you're delivering what you promised and what you're being asked to do on time, because that's what you're getting paid for. So, but a lot of times your client might not make it easy for you. They might make it very difficult for you. And it's up to you to be able to manage that situation, because no one's going to do it for you. Like, no one is going to care, honestly. And that is the thing that you have to accept. If you're new to engineering, or you just think that's something you might want to do later on, or you're studying right now, one thing you have to accept is that everything is your fault. And this could apply to whatever, but everything is your fault. And you have to just think about that, because that's how basically everyone else is going to see it. Anyone that's hiring you, if something goes wrong, they might not understand what's going wrong, but they're going to default to just assuming it's your fault. So it doesn't work to explain to them, oh, see, this is what happened. That doesn't matter. It's just they're not getting what they want, and that's your fault, regardless of what's going on. There's some kind of crazy thing, you got hit by a car or some shit like that. I don't know. But, if the artist is being difficult and they're contributing to making the process more difficult, you sometimes have to take matters into your own hands, and you need to talk and have conversations and things like that, so that you can do what you need to do and get the job done. Because the only people that know how difficult this is are the other people that do this difficult job. So you just can't take an excuse that the job is hard. That's just what it is. So you have to be proactive, and you have to solve a lot of problems, a lot of these like non-music related problems, all these human related problems. You have to be ahead of that, and you have to be able to spot them, early on. You have to know when there's a potential for a certain person that you're working with, based on what their personality is like and things like that. You have to start being aware of potential issues that you could have. And after you do it for a while, you meet a few people, a few different personality types, you start to kind of get an idea, to figure it out, to be like, oh, okay, I've seen this before. And, how did I mess this up last time? What can I learn from the past experience? How can I, get ahead of this issue before it turns into something? And we have one more song left, so let me do that, because time is running out. Wicked Wise. This probably was the most difficult song to engineer, but my most, maybe Belong in the Sun is my favorite song just to listen to, but Wicked Wise is my favorite mix that I did, and favorite accomplishment that I mixed this song and I got it done, and I got it to Teo's liking. Because it's all live. The whole thing is live. It's a live drum track the whole way. there's only one lead vocal. I think there's like no background vocals at all. But that doesn't necessarily make the vocals easier to mix. So there's drums, there's lots of guitars, there's keys, there's some synths, and this took a while. Just like the drums alone took a while to figure out the sound of what it was. We recorded the drums just basically pretty simple and raw and kind of sterile in a way. Not sterile, but just they were just very super raw recorded drums. So they needed to be processed a lot to get the character of the drums sound that Teo wanted. And he gave me references to some other songs of what he would like the drums to sound like. But drums can sound, wildly different. Different drum sets, different studio live rooms, different microphones, like all that stuff. Like the drummer themselves is going to make the drums sound different than another guy. So there's a lot of factors going on. Then of course there's the mix. There's things you do in the mix to shape the sound. But yeah, it's, you can't mix one person's voice to sound like a completely different person. You can't mix Michael Jackson to sound like Adele. I don't know, can you? I could be proven wrong, but you know what I'm saying. So I knew I couldn't get exactly the sound of the drums he wanted. So I just had to go at least in the direction of those reference drums and go by what I heard, which was, to give them more of an analog feel, give them some distortion, a little bit of crunch, not like real subtle, just for character and tone. And just to get the right feel, because there's this part where it's just stick playing, and then it goes to regular snare. And then there's different sections of the song, so different sections need to have a different energy. And I had to do a lot. I had to do some editing on the drums. I think, I just did a lot of levels of processing for the drums. I think for the kick, I split the one kick into, there was two mics on the kick drum. There's an inside mic and an outside mic. But I think what I did was I figured out like a good blend of those, and then I bounced that down to one sound, and the same thing with the snare. And then with those bounced down kick and snare, I duplicated them and made, I did parallel processing. So I did one that was filtered out and distorted, and that's kind of blended in with the main kick, just to give a little more bite, more mid-range attack on it. Same thing for the snare and for the stick, and I had to adjust, automate so it's different amounts of each of these different parallel layers going on with that. Same thing with the overhead mics. I duplicated those, and I did maybe the same thing, just like one layer that's distorted and filtered out. And I probably did some kind of like transient plug-in to just add more attack to it also, blend it in. Then I did something on the whole mix bus of the drums to do more processing on that. So they're very, very, very highly processed by this point, by what you hear in the end. But I like it, he liked it, so what can I say? And then there's an interesting thing of how the song builds towards the end, like the last quarter of the song. It starts going in another direction, and it builds up, and the drums start getting more busier and picking up the energy. The guitars start doing it. There's more layers come in of guitar at the end just to build the intensity more. There's some keys, there's some synth. It gets pretty thick towards that end. So, and then there's the then it gets to like just the toms and the kick. It's just a one loud rumble of the drums. Plus there's a bass guitar doing it. So there was like a lot of stuff going on in the low mids that was starting. It was getting out of control. It was getting too muddy and all that stuff. So I had to figure out how to pull back from certain frequencies to make sure it was all not getting so messy and all that, but to still sound full enough for what that end part needed to be. You know, it needs to just sound big. That's the end of the song and the end of the album. So this is like, this whole song is the climax to the whole album. So I had to keep that in mind, that that's what we're hearing right now in this part of the song. It goes beyond just this song. It's, you know, so I had to think about that. I want this album, the end of this song, to really wrap up how people are feeling about the end of this whole album. And then same thing what you hear with the guitar elements and everything, figuring out what's the right balance. Because there's like, I don't know, there's like 5 or 6 different guitar layers going on at that end. And some are meant to be ambient in the back, some are meant to be up front. And it was just getting that perfect balance of where everything lives at. By then there's no vocals, so that helps. But yeah, it's to me, it's a very satisfying like climax and end to the song in the album with that moment. So that was another special one for me, to like get that song finished and get to that point where that's when I finish that song, then I know I've put the finish on the entire album. So that was very relieving to get to that point. So there you have it. That's the album. That is the album. I talked for a while. I guess this is the longest thing I've done so far, but for good reason. A lot to talk about. So, anybody that's listening to this that has questions about anything I've talked about or something you'd like me to talk about, please contact me. You can find me. Let's see. Jesus. I don't have my. I'm so unprofessional at this. I don't have my info like ready to go. So, well, at James Cholrim, you can find me. Talk Like No One's Listening podcast. You can look that up. I think I have a Twitter, which I never check. That is, it's probably tlnol _podcast at Twitter, I think. Anyways, if you try, you can figure out a way to contact me. So, yeah, comments, questions, whatever, subscribe, all that cheesy stuff. And I'm gonna try to do another episode that's just more talking about experience engineering, not specific to a project, just things that I feel like maybe could be useful insights that would help any people that are earlier in the stage of their career process of this, whatnot. I enjoy being able to share, like I said, any type of info that's going to help anybody out there. I know this was very difficult for me early on. The first half of my career was all just, walking through a minefield. Nobody knows where the mines are at, so you got to watch your step. But once you make it through the minefield, at least you could tell the next person, hey, don't walk there, don't walk there. Careful, don't walk there, don't walk there. So they don't get blown up. Anyways, all right. I'm going to be out. I got to pack up and hit the road. So I'll check you out next time. Again, my name is James. Thanks for listening to the Talk Like No One's Listening podcast. Peace. I'm out.